Howdy, everybody. Welcome to episode 16 of the Watching Privacy Show. And one piece of feedback I got off the bat is today is October 22nd. I feel like when people go back and watch these and binge these shows, as I'm sure everybody's doing, they don't know what day we're actually talking. So like, the news articles may or may not make sense. So October 22nd, 2021. And let's dive in. I think there's a lot in the news this week, so it's going to be kind of hard to cover it all. But right off the bat, I think one of the best pieces of news to start on a high note is Brave Browser is rolling out their own search engine. So it was in beta for a little bit, and now it's finally, I believe, the default on Brave Browser. And if you're not using Brave Browser already, I would suggest it's probably one of the most privacy-friendly browsers out there right now. And yeah, they basically just took out Google, even skipped DuckDuckGo, as Raju mentioned a little bit about last week about how a lot of these third-party services end up using Microsoft Bing as a backend for their search capabilities. But I believe Brave has built out their own completely from scratch, which is a great news. And I think there's a lot of Brave users, and in the beta program, maybe a lot of people didn't use it, but now that it's going to be publicly available, and I'm pretty sure default in the browser, I think it's going to be good news, and maybe people will start seeing that there are other browsers available, and they can be decent, I'm sure. Have any of you guys played with it that much, or?
I use Brave browser quite a bit. Search occasionally, not frequent, so I can't provide actual feedback on what I think about the search yet. It's too early, but I like the browser. I love the move from Brave about making it a default. That tells you how much defaults matter, and that tells you why Google desperately wants to win the browser wars, right? That said, short term, I'm going to continue using Brave and Brave Search. Long term, I remain skeptical. The reason being, they are thinking of their business model is ads. Privacy and ads don't mix, and I'm sorry, but that is the reality. If somebody thinks they can maintain a balance, good luck with that. Particularly when you have investors in there. Brave has raised some 40 plus million already in there. There's going to be a point where these investors will want a return on investment. Let's just say the ads will move from the side to the top, and that's just the beginning. So in the long run, in the short run, they have a good product, good model, good search. In the long run, they have a business model problem. Till they fix that, we are back. We have seen this movie before.
It's almost like everybody, I think, starts with good intentions, going down this road, but somewhere along the line, even the smallest step across the line takes them over the line, and once you get over the line, it's like hard to put. It goes from privacy first to privacy kind of up near first.
Well, privacy as a marketing angle, not the real thing.
Yeah.
That's where it goes.
Yeah, and so and we're going to see why all of this is everything around privacy pays a price revenue wise, and when you have stockholders and shareholders you have to answer to, and financial analysts that you have to answer to, even the slightest little step could cost you significant amount of a lot of stuff.
Browser vendors historically has had business model problems, and no independent browser companies existed because they didn't find an alternative business model where they can make money from. Take something like Firefox today. It's a good browser. I mean, I use Firefox Focus, not the standard Firefox. The reason is, I looked at the default settings of Firefox. I wouldn't exactly call it privacy friendly. Well, I didn't expect that from Firefox, knowing that 94% of Firefox revenue is coming from Google. Of course, you did not expect. So just like Brave or Firefox, they all have business model problems.
Yeah, I mean, Google's the one that keeps Firefox afloat. But I mean, I would say, maybe a optimistic setting, there's got to be some way to have, maybe not privacy friendly advertisements, but like some ad model that can not be so obtrusive. It might not be the most profit making ad model, and you can maybe dump some ads. Maybe it's only get vendors who are privacy focused themselves, or there's got to be like just like an offline ad, like a billboard is not really like, I mean, it's a form of advertisement that's not technically that I would say privacy invasive really. Maybe they can come up with something if they really want to double down on the privacy angle. Like you said, historically, I don't think it's looking too good for them, but maybe we can cross our fingers and hope that they come up with something.
Yeah, it can, Tejas. The thing is, one thing that comes in on the way is greed.
Yeah. Well,
If you're, the ones that don't have it did well. History shows that Craigslist still goes strong. Why? They're happy with what they got and they continue to do a good job. Wikipedia does an amazing job. They keep, chugging along, right? They are not in the process of maximizing investor returns. So whenever you have that greed come into play, business model goes for a toss.
yeah.
I think I've heard that greed is good. Oh wait a minute, that's an old Michael Douglas movie, but yeah, just maybe they take that to heart. I don't know what's going on.
I guess maybe another piece of good news. Last week we covered the IRS, basically having a $600 cutoff and into like snooping into accounts to allegedly curtail tax avoidance and evasion, probably. And now news is coming out that $600 might go up to $10,000. I don't think that really changes the core of the issue, though. I mean, at the end of the day, yeah, I'm sure there's studies that say like how much people have in their checking accounts and what percentage of people this affects. But I mean, it could be 600, 10,000, 100,000. I don't think that number is what really matters. If you get audited, I'm pretty sure they can go through your bank account. So it's like, you're hoping that you can find more areas for audit. And I don't think the people with $600 or $10,000 in their checking account are really the people you want to be going after in the situation. So kind of good news, but still, I guess not really a good scenario overall. Did you guys see anything else new that kind of developed, or just this number really changed? I don't think too much else did.
Yeah, I mean, the issue is not the number. The issue is, the or opening a door, and it'll be wide open once you start an entry there. So I think the issue, is not necessarily the number, but it is giving access to these systems and providing that access to the government. And once it's open, it never closes.
Yeah, that's the whole thing. It may be. Let's say it's better news. It went from 600 to 10,000, so it's not as bad news. I guess you put it like that. But yeah, all it takes is to get that door open and the foot in the door, and those numbers can move all over the place. But it's the principle. I think that once that principle is breached, so to speak, who knows, where these numbers will end up going.
Yeah, I talked about it with a couple of friends over the week, and a lot of them kind of were surprised that the government can't already see this, which I guess I never really thought of, but most of us should probably just expect that they can get this if they want it. Like it shouldn't be that big of a deal. Maybe it's just more publicized now or more in your face about it. But if they want it, they can probably get it. So it's not.
I think they have to subpoena or at least make a formal request, which makes sense.
Yeah.
But being a data collector, data aggregator of all financial accounts isn't, and keeping them secure isn't really the strength of the government.
Yeah, I might be a little understatement on that one. But maybe this turns out to be a good week, because now that I'm looking at it, the next story was pretty decent as well. The FTC is looking at focusing on privacy and cybersecurity as a priority going forward. And there's a couple of good, snippets out of this thing where basically they made it clear data privacy and cybersecurity are now a priority and will be for the years to come. And I think they also have, if you got the next slide up too, Brent, there's a couple things that they want to do, stuff for children under 18, algorithmic and biometric bias, which is something we've talked about a lot on this show over the past couple episodes, and deceptive and manipulative practices. All three are pretty good categories. I think it'd be interesting to see how they execute, but at least that these are being talked about and publicized. I think that's maybe a step in the right direction, that something could happen here. I mean, I guess we got to hope for it, but
yeah, some of these are good moves, not necessarily privacy moves. I really don't see much to do with privacy here. It's more to do with algorithms and targeting and manipulative content to whatnot, I don't see privacy. So, in my view, nothing changes yet. Hopefully, this is just an indication of what's to come. But yeah, we still remain the Cayman Islands of privacy abusers at this point.
Yeah, I mean these are they're positives. Let's put it that they are definitely positive.
Right.
But yeah, I agree. I don't think they really speak to the kind of the these are like the table stakes here. These things. It doesn't speak to the overall ethical use of people's data. This is a security measure. I think a lot of this is more security because you want to protect particularly the folks that are younger from things that happen. But
Uh,
protection and security is one thing which is important. Taking that next leap into privacy concerns, I think this doesn't really get that yet.
this is likely a smart move in their case, Brent, where you put out a privacy law and that is compared with GDPR, and it's all the lobby money at play, I guess, where you say you have something because it's not like people know the difference between privacy and security, right? So we're putting a law in there, and
Yeah.
lobby dollars at work, and so that's where I know I'm being skeptical here, but so far I haven't seen anything comprehensive, nothing close to GDPR. Would love to see it, but not holding my breath on that.
Yeah.
It's like when I ask people about your privacy policy. Oh yeah, we're real secure. We got our security. No, that's not exactly what I asked you about. I think people they know what they're doing, and I think in a number of instances they can get away with that. But I think as time goes on, as more people get more comfortable in their knowledge of what's privacy and what's ethical about how data is being used, not how it's being secured from hackers, but actually how are you using my data and who are you allowing that? That's a whole different story. And I think eventually the shell game is not going to be able to be won much longer.
Yeah. Maybe, I mean, at that point, like Roger said, putting privacy and security in the same sentence together kind of could just drive a couple more clicks, right? You search for privacy stories and this one will come up, but not a lot there. But kind of blurring the lines, I guess, maybe with security and privacy too, is this Connecticut law as well, because again, it talks about privacy laws, but I didn't really see much about privacy in this one either. It was kind of about like data breaches and being able to notify customers if there's a data breach immediately. Honestly, I think the numbers were something like within 60 days of knowledge of the breach, which I'm not really sure why it's 60 days knowledge of the breach. I mean, too much, unless you're like giving people time to figure out the extent of the breach and how much was actually lost. But I feel like once you know that there's a breach and something's gone wrong, you should be able to, I mean, within 30 days, I don't think that's unreasonable for a month to figure out what happened and notify your customers. And even if you don't know the extent of the breach, you can still notify your customers and say it got breached. That extra 60 days seems kind of arbitrary, in my opinion. So I guess maybe a baby step forward, but not really that big of a deal. I guess having something better is better than nothing. But what are you guys' thoughts on this one too? Just like the last article, a little bit more security oriented, but not a lot really on privacy.
Yeah, I mean, nothing to do with privacy, though they call it that. They know that people are worried about privacy, but just put it in the title and nothing in the content.
Man, we are a cynical lot, aren't we? I totally agree with you.
I was hoping as I went through it, I was hoping I would see something related to privacy in both cases, but except the title, I didn't see much related to that. And it's like people confuse completely between privacy and security, and it's but at least at that level, particularly when you're setting the policy, you should know the difference between the privacy and security.
Well, look at this the second paragraph. So long as a business has written a cybersecurity program that meets the so that's about hackers. That's about making sure the data isn't going to be stolen. It's not about ethical use at all. So much ado about something. It just ain't about privacy.
Yeah. Well, our favorite privacy-friendly friends over at Facebook are in the news this week again after quite the week last week too. On a couple fronts, I guess we'll call them Facebook for this episode and maybe next episode. we'll call them something else. But I want to say in Europe, they're getting investigated for this Giphy or Jiffy, however we want to say it, acquisition. We talked about this when the news first broke a couple episodes back, and um, I'm pretty sure that these guys are not supplying the right kind of information that needs to be supplied, and a lot of it was around kind of the separation of user data from the Jiffy product and the Facebook product, and seeing if it goes through or not. I'm not really sure on the legal technicalities of if one country blocks a merger, how that really works worldwide. But I did see that like Australia was involved in this, or Australia and Austria were both involved in separate investigations into this acquisition. So could probably not work out very well for them in the meantime. But in general, I mean, they had to know that this was going to be a dicey acquisition given everything going on, and they still went forward with it. So we'll see when more details come out. But did you guys get anything else out of the story that stuck out, or kind of just we got to wait and see? But it's good that it's at least being investigated further.
I know, Brent, you focused on me. I'm a non-user of Jiffy. I haven't used a GIF in 20 years. And I'm not a user of Facebook. And I couldn't care less about this. And
You got to worry about the other people, the people that are affected.
yeah, so I didn't even care to follow the story. But and I'm glad I
You know,
didn't do.
the thing that stood out to me is look at these fines. It's like is that even considered a slap on the wrist? That's like a slap on the pinky or something. When you're talking about
really,
Facebook and how
Probably
much
what they
money they
make,
have.
what they make in a second or some such number.
Yeah, so it's like completely. What's the point of this? Really, what's the point of it? No, it's this. It's ridiculous.
Speaking of using that fingerprint, actually, that could be a good segue to the next one. So there's this researcher that basically was able to point their finger and use Facebook's ad tools to target a single user. I want to believe it's they wanted to get an advertisement over to like Reddit or something along those lines. Um, oh no, the research paper was different. There was a couple anecdotal stories that were separate from this research paper. So the anecdotal stories were someone wanted to advertise to like Reddit CEO to basically make them implement some kind of feature in terms of like some kind of recommendation engine or something along those lines. And then a couple of years back, there was a big story about there was a startup person that wanted to get into Y Combinator and basically bought like LinkedIn ads to target specifically like some of the Y Combinator like leaders in charge, and was able to target them explicitly almost, and then give them get their pitch in front of this person, and then eventually got into Y Combinator. So clearly these targeting capabilities is very, very precise, and rightfully so, because that's why they make so much money. But to say that these are all like cohorts and you're not individually targeting anybody, I think we're finding out that if you basically know enough attributes of somebody, you can easily target them. I mean, doesn't seem like rocket science. If we found people who were like, my age and my interest in Austin, I'm sure people would target me with an ad, and it's not crazy. Is it in the company's best interest to do that kind of isolated targeting? Probably not, but it just shows how detailed it can really get. And I think that's the bigger exposure is the cohort of one. I think, Roger, you talked about a while ago, and you can make those groups very small and very, very targeted.
I mean, frankly, I'm even surprised that their research had to be done to prove that, this is frankly, simple. You cannot use a Facebook till you have an account. So it is a targeting of one. You can always, which means they may not offer the tools to the advertisers, but it's just a bad quarter or two away from offering additional targeting options. So I always believe the cohort size, the smallest entity possible is a cohort of one. And I'm pretty sure that the same thing is possible in LinkedIn. Let's say you want to target Tim Cook, title is equal to CEO, revenue greater than whatever their billions it is, then it's a target of one. You want your app to be featured? Well, target all the App Store reviewers out there, and where company is equal to Apple, then that's pretty straightforward. So, I think the smallest entity of target is always one person, and some ad platforms may reveal it, but I think some may not. But again, I believe that it is possible. It's just a matter of time. And for companies which don't mandate user login, like let's say you never have a Google account and you use Google, in that case it becomes a little difficult. But I believe Google has figured out the cohorts, and even there you might be able to target them. But for such cases it could be more tricky compared to every other service that requires a login. Your Pinterest needs a login, Twitter needs a login, Facebook needs a login. So you can assume by default that the target is all you can always target an individual. In this case, the tools may not be available, but again, it's just a matter of time.
Yeah, I mean, how many episodes have we talked about? You know, how these data aggregators could pull pieces of data from here and there and there and stitch together who you are. I mean, Facebook doesn't have to do a lot of aggregating from other sources. I mean, they've got a lot of sources, and this one dude can get to the Reddit CEO from basically doing that. And is there any anonymized data at this point, or is it just kind of like yeah,
I think
it's all anonymized, but it really doesn't take much to de-anonymize it.
I mean, it's the same way we talked about this in terms of like the de-anonymization, right? Like technically, you're not targeting this person's name, but if you target 10 attributes about that person, you are targeting that person without technically knowing it. And that's how you take data points and people and you put them together. If anything, that's probably the most clear example of it, so people understand how it works. Um,
Yeah.
and so, not
Isn't
very
it?
good.
Wasn't it Axiom that had 3,000 data points on each user or
Yeah, and
each
that's just those are
person?
just one small
One company.
company out there. Yeah.
I mean, I
Ah,
think given the open data out there, and additional targets will be available, like age will be more precise. For example, take I think the Connecticut or whatever data privacy laws that the FTC is launching. They are basically saying we're going to protect the children, which is a good move. How is it going to be implemented? Now Facebook and all these companies are going to mandate that because FTC mandated it. I want to know that this person is aged right. So which means
Right.
they'll have them upload a formal some kind of an identity. Well, they have an ID proof, so they have a date of birth or whatnot. Well, then you target by date of birth, target by age. It's just a matter of time before you can target someone by SSN too. So it's coming. So that targeting is going to get hyper focused.
Well, I mean, I guess maybe the targeting is at least mobile targeting is getting bad because the next story is about a little bit about Apple's advertising business booming. And yesterday in the news, I believe Snapchat was down something like 20,
25.
25% because they just completely blew expectations in a bad way in terms of their campaigns. And yeah, this screenshot that Brent has up is perfect because basically it just says that it's completely deteriorated their what do you call attribution for a lot of ad campaigns that they do. And so,
To
Eve, yeah, well, you
for
guys probably have a lot
me,
of thoughts on this.
for me, this is the positive story of the year. No, the positive story, because this is where why isn't targeting possible? Because users clearly spoke. Users clearly
Yes.
stopped,
Yeah.
opting in to the ads. So to me, that users are clear, saying it loud and clear that we do not want to be targeted, and that is the reason you're seeing drop in ad targeting and whatnot. So when you give the option to the users, these ad companies know that they will not pick opt in. So that is the reason they by default they are opted in. So now with Apple providing users the option, users are clearly speaking out, and this is an excellent. So I see this as a positive trend. User education and users opting out of tracking is the positive news of the year for me.
It's kind of funny to me that all these companies are surprised at the level of opting out that is taking place. It seems like they factored for some, but what they are getting is way beyond what they projected. and it's wreaking havoc with their revenue streams. And I'm like, why is this such a surprise to these folks? It's the more that people learn about how their data had been used in the past, the more they're like, well, hell no, I don't want that. And so they're opting out at these numbers. It's almost like these companies didn't realize how much people are starting to understand what's been going on for all these years. And now, given the option, they're opting out, or they're not opting in, which I think is what we always talk about. The default should be I'm opted out unless I say otherwise. It hasn't been that. Now the first opportunity that people are having to say, no, my default is opt out. Good, keep me opted out. It's surprising to me why these companies are surprised that their revenue streams are being, you know, almost sort of decimated to a certain extent at this point.
Well,
It's not like
they are
go ahead.
incentivized to not believe that, as or to quote Sinclair, because their paychecks are dependent on them not accepting that fact.
Yeah,
Here's
that's a
a
good one.
great question. I just want to bring this up because I love this question from Anand. Do you see this opting out trend as generational?
Yeah, that's a good question. It is probably. I think the next generation is opting in by default with all their all the information in public, and probably our generation is more conservative with our information. It probably is. Do we have concrete knowledge on that? Probably not. But I mean, it gives me a little hope when still there are still some companies that don't succeed, that are in the business of posting every credit card transaction to the public, and they didn't do well 15 years back, and even 2021 they don't do well. So it gives me some hope.
Yeah, I mean, I don't like Raji said. I'm not sure if there's like proper research done on it, but my general feel is that actually younger generations care a lot less about privacy. Just like Raji said, older people probably are used to a more privacy focused world with the lack of technology, and remember times when your stuff was not everywhere or accessible. But like I talked to like my little cousins and a couple friends last weekend at a dinner party, and one of them was showing me some video on TikTok, and then I tried to like lecture my like middle school cousin or nephew, I guess the same thing, whatever, relative, we'll call it, about like how bad it is and like what are your thoughts on like X, Y, and Z in terms of like protecting yourself. And the kid just gave like zero care in the world. He was like, whatever's cool, I signed up for it. It doesn't really matter. The whole thing is like whatever. And like after like 20 minutes of me like destroying this guy's time at a dinner party, basically I didn't really get through to him that well, so I need to work on my pitch a little bit better. But I just don't think younger people care as much because there's so many free and accessible tools, and that kind of, I mean, I think on one hand it does spark a lot of creativity and like opens up a lot of avenues for things, but the unintended consequences are I think going to be bigger going forward, not really minimized unless we're able to set some kind of policies or guidelines in place for protecting privacy more seriously nationally or even hopefully globally.
Yeah, I mean, if you went into, say, somebody, to pause, or maybe let's say, just say, you disappeared for 20 years, from 2020, come back online in 2020, 2000 to 2020. The privacy, what is considered privacy back then, and then what is considered privacy now? How did that transition? It did not shift right away. It's like slowly boiling a frog, and so now the new generation did not or does not know what privacy looks like. They're growing in this way, just like they do not. They are born post iPhone, or
Yeah.
post iPad, so, or post internet. And when I was talking to a 5-year-old daughter, she says, "Let me look it up." Right? You don't have that concept or terminology when I was when I was a 30-year-old. So that changes things, and yeah, demographic shifts and all of that has a lot to do with it.
So can I say, net this is a positive story. I'm gonna have to throw a little shade on this because, Apple, there's no doubting that the Apple privacy tweaks have had serious impact on, I think, in putting some power into the hands of the consumer. uh, the power is also getting put into the hands of Apple. And let's just throw a couple of these things up here because that tweak that has totally kind of impacted what Snap and Facebook and Google and all these other there is a big benefit to Apple taking place. And let's take a look at this slide here. Look at the share. So Apple is at the bottom there. Their share of the ad network. Uh, October, only 2 years ago, it was just like a little blip. But and as this graph points out, when they launched their 14.5 iOS update and they started getting into these privacy issues, April 26th. Look
I
what
mean, you
happened.
just look at that like it's.
I mean, it's we gotta give them credit, but it's not this is some kind of altruistic move going on here. There
Yeah.
is money to be made, and Apple is finding a way to they have this huge platform. They reach so many people, so they have found a way to kind of make it a win-win situation for them and for consumers. Consumers win because they get more choice, and we can see what choices they're making. They're making a choice for their privacy, but it also is putting in even more power and money into the hands of one company, Apple in this instance. And is the net is that a good thing when one company has so much power when it comes to making these privacy decisions?
I mean, I said this earlier, which is Apple doing advertising is a bad move because privacy and ads don't mix. Just like I said in the Brave context, privacy and ad based business model don't mix. The same is true here with Apple too. They may win the battle in terms of maximizing their ad revenue. They're going to lose the war on privacy. I think that is the bigger thing. It's sad because Apple, you thought, is the only company that is paying close attention to privacy, but now they're starting to push their advertising, and they're benefiting from it. They're people who are trusting Apple will grow skeptics, and that is a sad development, frankly.
I think on the Apple ad network, maybe I'm not sure this is as common knowledge of kind of how the ad network actually works. Maybe it requires a deep dive one of these days. But I think a lot of people would equate Apple ads to being maybe what you see in the App Store. But there is also like the Apple ad network of what pops up in like your free games that you're playing or whatever free services. Basically, like those banner ads that pop up within mobile apps. Those are served from different ad networks, either Google, Facebook, or Apple themselves. And so I think like it's underestimated actually where people see. Most people think of Facebook ads because it's on Facebook, but you don't really know where you would see an Apple ad or how it's really being displayed. And I think that lack of maybe publicity, which is probably kudos to Apple's PR team, but I don't see that being really that big of a deep dive that anybody's really exposed or seems to be common knowledge, right? Because there are a lot of ways that Apple's ad network works, and it's not just promote my app that I built on the App Store. There's a whole bigger pie, which is why this number is growing at the clip that it's growing, right? I think we do got to do a deeper dive in exposing just that because, like Raju said, the talk of privacy is clearly talk because the ad business is doing it. And how do those Apple um, advertisements and their ad network, what kind of information are they sanctioning up? We don't really know, right? Like we have an idea of like the Facebook and the Google stuff, but I feel like the Apple stuff is just a lot of it is under wraps in general, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
And I also
once
yeah.
if you are the head of the ad network in Apple, what are you going to be focusing on, right? You're going to be focusing on on the maximizing revenue or year over year improvements and whatnot. So that is a problem. Like, how far are we? If it's not already from Apple using location data from their devices for their
Mm-hmm.
ads, right? Because if you open an Apple Maps, by default you're logged in because you're logged into iCloud. And
Yep.
you're logged into pretty much everything out there, or just a find me network, and complement that with their air tags. It's not just you enabling it; someone else could be enabling it, and you could be found. And then you have the ad network and whatnot. How far is it? how far away are we from using air tags information for your ads? I I hope Apple doesn't go down this path. If Apple goes down that path, then they are going to be the new Facebook and Google when it comes to ads. That it would be a sad development to see.
And it's the case that Google, I think, and Facebook have been, kind of the poster child for digital ads, and you know, companies that are their competitors, small competitors, are looking at trying to take them out. That's why I think, when Google announced the whole cookieless third party cookieless stuff, and wanted to put in their, what is that thing called again? The that cohort thing, um, federated cohort or
Flock.
learners or something like that. Flock, yeah. And there's big pushback against it because it seems like the competitors were like, so we're going to just let Google decide what to put in place as third party cookies, and there's big pushback. I think Apple is going to start seeing some pushback because when you look at what's going on, and these companies, when you see a company like Snap, their stock price go down 25%, and they put the rationale is because the change to that Apple put in play impacted them like that. And you see these other companies, they're going to start trying to figure out ways to push back. It's almost going to be like I don't know what, Hunger Games or something, but it's going to happen that they're going to start feeling the pressure that Google's going to start feeling, and it just feels like, we talk about data so much and consumers. It's not uh, data is not the opium for the masses. Data is like the opium for the monopolies at this point, and it's all about how they get it and then use it to control the narrative, so to speak. At this point.
When you have a platform in general, the platform provider tries to maximize their revenue, be it through commissions, be it through various additional add-on services, right? Ads to whatnot. And if you look at what Amazon has become now, Amazon is a platform, right? More than 50% of their revenue comes from third parties, right? And of course, there are ads in there, and of course, they promote their own products, and there are the other aspects to it. If you look at that part, I don't see that any different from the app marketplace. One is other physical good atoms, and the other one is digital bits, right? And I also actually don't see any difference between that and even something like an AWS or Azure, because there again the providers that are deployed there are also no different from the third-party marketplace vendors out there. So which means in each of these cases, you're dependent on the platform providers. It's a matter of time before the platform provider just tightens their muzzle. We have seen that with, say, AWS, where Dropbox used to be on AWS, and Amazon decided to compete with them, and Dropbox had no option but to drop out of it. So whenever you are too dependent on a platform, and this usually happens, and the platforms, there is an incentive for the platform provider to maximize their revenue, and that impacts all the players that are playing in that ecosystem, because the platform introduces new products, ad products, be it new commissions, be it subscriptions, or in case of Amazon, they've done whatever shipping, warehousing, and whatnot. All of these is nothing new. We are seeing this in the digital world, but I think this is something that anyone playing in the ecosystem should should think: where are you in control of your business, or is someone else's? That's an important question if you're a business owner to ask. So, in other words, I think Tejas said this in one of these shows. They outsource their business model
Yeah.
to these platform providers.
Not very good long term, I would say. I mean,
Hey,
Snap was like on the Snap example. Snap was coming back, and then this just completely crushed him, and it's hard to come out of that 25% drop. I gotta say, Andrew's comment was hilarious.
yeah,
Snap.
you know, can we since a lot of shout outs, there's some great comments, and there's one I'm afraid it's going to cover up, like it almost covers up Raju's face. it's such a long comment, but we're getting some really good comments and feedback. So shout out to
That was a
Jose
hilarious story,
Alejandro,
Jose.
yeah, Anand and Ratul and Andrew, of course, and I don't know no me I don't want to ruin his name, but thank you for the comment and the compliment, and yeah, thanks for everybody that's adding their voice to this. It's we could go forever on this one, and I think it's still at the tip of the iceberg because this move it hasn't really even been a full year since they started doing this stuff, and look what's happening. I mean, and look the power shift from the other guys to Apple is fascinating. So it's Apple is in a very interesting position because they haven't been dependent on ad revenue, and they still aren't. For crying out loud, I just ordered the new MacBook Pro with the M1 Max chip with 64 gig. I mean, people are going crazy for actual buying the new stuff, which dwarfs the revenue they would get from the pennies, relatively speaking, from this ad stuff. They don't
Mhm.
have to do it. That's the thing about. I agree with Roger completely. They don't have to do their business model is not built on this. But once again, it's opium. It's like it's free money. Why not get it? Yeah, we can
And
help customers and we can make it too. So why not?
that is where you're in the financialized world where you are you are forced to grow. Imagine Tim Cook getting on a quarterly call saying that we are happy with where we are and we are not going to grow next quarter. Do you think the investors will be happy?
And I'm
They will
announcing
want
my
someone else, right?
retirement.
Yeah.
Yeah, that ain't gonna happen. Yeah, that's boy. I mean, we start out thinking this week. Oh, there wasn't a lot of stuff to happen, and
Yeah, the
then
last couple of days kind of
yesterday
just
really,
snowballed.
yeah. That's that Snap thing. I feel sorry for Snap. I usually don't feel sorry for these folks, but when you see that deep a dive because of not just what they lost, but why they lost it, and like you said, Raju, their business model is not built on something that's within their hands because Apple can have the greatest business model on paper. It looks good, sounds good, but if a company like one of these fan companies
Yeah.
tweaks something,
There, there is a broader thing. Maybe it's for another show, right? Yeah. Snap snapped because they did not. They paid attention to the technology and the product, right? In a lot of cases, particularly in the valley, it's filled with companies who create good products with bad economics. And it's like they passed the business class and the technology class and failed the economics class. And 90% of the industry is that way.
Well, I think that's a good one to end on. We started kind of happy with Brave, and then we just went down like a dark path. But I mean, in general, I mean, I think Brave is
we
still like one
tried.
of the
We
better
tried
pieces of
it.
news this week. So I mean, if you're not using Brave
Yes.
browser already, check
Yes.
out the Brave search. Until they become an evil company, if they ever do. But for now, it's still decent. So I mean, I can't. There's not like a better recommendation you can have besides really using Brave, and that's like your first step towards privacy. So if there's one takeaway, that's that. But yeah, I guess we're right around the time mark, so we can wrap up. Of course, like, share, subscribe. We'll be back next Friday. Sorry, and actually, subscriptions is important. You can't rename a YouTube URL for a channel until you hit 100 subscribers. We're halfway there with 50. If you can just hit the subscribe button, you don't even have to hit the bell. You don't got to get notifications. Just subscribe so we can make the URL not look ugly and make it a little bit more easier to find for more people. So 50 more subscriptions. Who knows? Maybe subscriber 100. We'll let them come on the show if they want to, or something like that. But yeah, thanks a lot. Good Friday. Have a good weekend, y'all, and see y'all next Friday.